Some Hollywood stories shine with fame, beauty, and success. But behind the lights, there are lives marked by fear, tragedy, and strange events that never found an explanation. Today, we uncover the haunting stories of stars who believed they lived under a curse, stories of accidents, mysteries, heartbreak, and shadows that followed them until the very end. James Dean is remembered today as the face of youth, rebellion, and pure charisma. But behind the stylish photos, fast cars, and powerful acting roles, there is a darker story that has followed his name for decades. Many people believe James Dean lived under a strange shadow long before his tragic death. Some say he felt it too. The center of this legend is his bright silver Porsche 550 Spyder, a racing car he proudly named Little Bastard. To Hollywood fans, this car is not just a vehicle. It is one of the most famous cursed objects in the history of American cinema. Dean bought the Porsche in 1955, the same year he became a Hollywood sensation. He wanted to race professionally, and the Spyder was perfect for high-speed competitions. But the moment he showed the car to friends, people felt uneasy. Actor Alec Guinness, known later for playing Obi-Wan Kenobi, said he felt something was off the instant he saw the car. He told Dean the car gave him a bad feeling, something cold and unnatural. Then Guinness added a sentence that would become one of the most disturbing warnings in Hollywood history. Please do not get in that car. If you do, you'll be dead within a week. Exactly 7 days later, James Dean died in that car. On September 30th, 1955, Dean was driving the Porsche to a race when a car crossed his lane. Witnesses said the crash was fast and violent, giving Dean no chance to react. He died almost instantly, and the world felt the shock of losing a young actor whose career was only beginning. But the story didn't end with his death. What came after is what turned the legend of James Dean into something almost supernatural. The wrecked Porsche was sold for parts. And that's where the curse seemed to grow. A man who installed parts from Dean's engine into his own racing car later spun out on the track and crashed badly. Another racer who bought parts from the suspension also suffered a terrible accident. The truck transporting the remains of Little Bastard reportedly caught fire for no clear reason. A mechanic working on restoring parts of the wreck had the car fall on him, breaking bones. When the hood of the car was displayed in exhibitions, it sometimes slipped from its frame and injured visitors. Even disappearing events were reported. The entire wreck supposedly vanished while being transported in 1960, and no confirmed trace of it has been found since. These events fueled a belief that the spirit of the car carried a curse that continued long after Dean was gone. James Dean himself spoke openly about danger. Friends said he joked about dying young. He once said the Porsche made him feel alive, but also strangely tense, as if the car had its own personality. Hearing those stories today, the legend feels even heavier. His short life, bright fame, tragic death, and the violent history of Little Bastard have created one of Hollywood's most haunting tales. The Superman Curse, George Reeves. The next story is linked to one of the most iconic figures in American culture, Superman. The Superman curse is one of Hollywood's most discussed legends, a pattern of tragedy, accidents, and strange misfortunes connected to actors who played Superman or were closely linked to the character. The tragedy that started this legend was the fate of actor George Reeves. George Reeves starred as Superman in the 1950s television series Adventures of Superman. Children admired him. He looked strong, brave, and kind, exactly how Superman should look. But off-screen, Reeves was the opposite of the hero he played. He faced depression, financial stress, career struggles, and a deep feeling of being trapped. Hollywood typecast him so quickly and so severely that he could not escape the shadow of the Superman suit. Casting directors refused to hire him for serious roles, and Reeves felt his acting career slipping through his fingers. Friends later said he felt jinxed, as if the role carried bad luck with it. In 1959, Reeves was found dead from a gunshot wound at age 45. The official report said it was suicide, but almost everything about the case was strange. Some people in the house gave confusing statements. There were rumors of arguments earlier that night. There were no fingerprints on the gun. Some friends insisted that Reeves was making plans for the future and did not seem suicidal. The mystery created endless theories and pushed the idea that Reeves had fallen victim to something darker, something that surrounded the Superman role. After Reeves, more tragedies followed. Christopher Reeve, who became the most famous Superman of the 1970s and 1980s, suffered a life-changing accident in 1995 that left him paralyzed. He spent the rest of his life fighting for mobility and health, inspiring millions, but the accident was so shocking that people immediately revived the idea of a curse. Margot Kidder, who played Lois Lane in the Reeve films, later struggled with severe mental health problems. Other actors linked to Superman projects faced illnesses, career collapses, and unexpected hardships. Some of these things can be coincidences. Hollywood is full of pressure, stress, and unpredictable lives. But the amount of misfortune surrounding people connected to one single character made fans uneasy. George Reeves himself felt the curse long before anyone named it. Friends said he hated being known only as Superman. He felt his career dying while his popularity grew. He once told a friend that wearing the Superman suit felt like wearing someone else's life, and that the cape felt heavier every year. Behind the charming smile and heroic pose, Reeves lived with loneliness and quiet sadness. His tragic and mysterious death became the foundation of a legend that still follows every new Superman actor today. Whether real or not, the Superman curse has become one of Hollywood's most famous myths, a story of a hero whose symbol of strength somehow carries a strange shadow. Patricia Neal? Patricia Neal is one of those Hollywood figures whose life feels like a long series of dramatic events. She was beautiful, talented, and strong, but her journey through fame was filled with more pain than most people could imagine. Throughout her life, she often said that she felt as if some dark force was following her. She never used the word curse, but the number of tragedies she experienced made many people believe she lived under one. Her career was full of success, but her personal life was marked by loss, heartbreak, and near-death experiences that felt almost unreal. Patricia first became famous in the 1940s when she was very young. Her beauty was natural, and her presence on screen felt calm, confident, and powerful. But behind her rising success, there were already dark clouds forming. One of the most painful chapters of her life was her relationship with the famous actor Gary Cooper. They fell in love quickly, and Patricia believed he was the man she would spend her life with. But Cooper was married, older, and torn between two worlds. Their relationship lasted years, full of passion, arguments, and emotional wounds. In the end, he left her, and Patricia was left with a broken heart and a depression so deep that she struggled to work. But that heartbreak was only the beginning. Later, after she married the famous writer Roald Dahl, tragedy struck her family again and again. First came the accident with her baby son, Theo. He was still an infant when a taxi hit his stroller in New York. The boy suffered severe brain damage and needed years of medical care. Patricia spent countless hours in hospitals, feeling helpless and terrified, unsure if her child would ever recover. She said later that those days felt like walking through a dark tunnel without end. Then another catastrophe came. Patricia's daughter, Olivia, became ill with measles and died suddenly at age 7. Losing a child is one of the worst pains a parent can feel, and Patricia carried that wound for the rest of her life. She said her home felt empty, and the world looked colder after her daughter's death. Some of her friends believed that so many tragedies were too much for one person, that there had to be something strange or cursed in her life. But the darkest moment was still ahead. In 1965, Patricia Neal suffered a series of massive strokes while pregnant. She collapsed and was rushed to the hospital. Doctors believed she would not survive the night. They told her husband to prepare for the worst. But somehow she lived. She spent weeks in a coma, unable to move or speak, and when she finally woke up, she had to relearn everything: how to walk, talk, and even recognize her family. Her recovery was long and painful, but she refused to give up. Many people saw her survival as a miracle, but Patricia herself said it felt like being trapped between life and death, fighting invisible forces that wanted to pull her down. Even after her recovery, the pain didn't stop. Her marriage fell apart, more health problems showed up, and she spent many years feeling like she was constantly walking on the edge of disaster. Looking back, her life feels like a story of someone who kept getting hit again and again by events so tragic that they almost seem unbelievable. It is no wonder that many believe Patricia Neal lived under a heavy shadow, a series of misfortunes that never left her alone. Clara Bow, the silent screen star who felt haunted by her own mind. Clara Bow was called the It Girl of the 1920s, the star with a spark that made her unforgettable. She had a wild charm, a warm smile, and a glowing energy that made audiences fall in love with her instantly. But the truth of Clara Bow's life was very different from the glamorous image Hollywood sold. Behind her success, she carried deep emotional wounds, terrifying childhood memories, and severe mental health struggles. She often said she felt chased by something she could never escape. For her, life sometimes felt cursed long before she became famous. Clara's childhood was one of the darkest stories in early Hollywood history. She grew up in extreme poverty, with a mentally unstable mother and an absent father. Her mother suffered from severe mental illness and often showed frightening behavior. During one of her breakdowns, she even tried to attack Clara while she slept. These childhood traumas stayed inside Clara's mind her entire life, shaping the way she saw the world. Fame gave her money and attention, but it never erased her fear that something bad was always waiting around the corner. When she entered Hollywood, Clara became a sensation almost overnight. But success brought jealousy, rumors, and constant pressure. Directors yelled at her. Gossip magazines spread lies about her, and people in the industry looked down on her because she came from poverty. Clara was hurt deeply by the cruelty she saw behind the cameras. Fame made her more anxious, not happier. She once said that Hollywood felt like a place where everyone smiles while sharpening knives behind their backs. Clara's mental health began to collapse. She experienced panic attacks, long periods of depression, and moments when she felt she was losing control of her thoughts. The gossip press mocked her constantly, calling her unstable and wild. This only made her condition worse. At the height of her career, she broke down completely and was sent to a sanitarium to recover. She was barely 30 years old when she retired from Hollywood forever. Even after leaving the film industry, Clara lived in fear. She worried that something terrible would happen to her or her family. She said her mind felt full of shadows she couldn't escape. She rarely left her home and spent most of her days in isolation. Her story is heartbreaking because it shows how a bright Hollywood star can be destroyed not by one tragic event, but by years of emotional wounds that never healed. People later called her life cursed, not because of ghosts or accidents, but because of the deep mental scars that followed her everywhere. Mary Astor, the scandal that felt like a curse. Mary Astor was one of the most talented actresses of classic Hollywood. She had a powerful screen presence and a face that cameras loved. But her life was dominated by one of the most explosive scandals in Hollywood history. For Mary, this scandal felt like a curse that destroyed her peace, her family, her reputation, and nearly her entire career. The center of the scandal was Mary's private diary, a diary filled with personal details about her relationships, her emotions, and her most intimate thoughts. During a bitter custody battle with her ex-husband, the diary was taken and used against her in court. Her ex-husband wanted full custody of their daughter, and he used the diary to paint Mary as unfit and immoral. Rumors began to spread that the diary contained stories about her affairs with powerful men, including politicians and actors. Newspapers exploded with headlines about her secret life, and suddenly Mary's name became one of the biggest scandals in Hollywood. The scandal felt like an attack on her entire identity. Mary had worked for years to build her career, but now her private thoughts were being twisted into public entertainment. Crowds gathered outside the courthouse. Journalists followed her everywhere. People judged her without knowing the truth. Mary said later that she felt cursed during that period, as if every decision she made turned into another disaster. She was terrified of losing her daughter. She was terrified of losing her career. And she was terrified that the world would never see her as anything other than the woman from the diary scandal. The emotional stress was enormous. Mary suffered panic attacks, dizziness, and sudden breakdowns. She had trouble sleeping and felt constantly watched. Her reputation collapsed overnight, and even though many of the rumors were exaggerated or simply invented, the damage was already done. After the scandal, Mary tried to return to normal life, but the shadow of the diary followed her everywhere. Even years later, when she won an Academy Award, reporters still asked about the scandal. She felt as if her past never stopped dragging her backward. Friends said she became quieter, more guarded, and more afraid of letting people get close to her. She wrote later that fame felt like a mirror that breaks easily and cuts you every time you try to put it back together. Mary Astor's story is a reminder of how quickly Hollywood can turn on someone. For her, the diary scandal felt like a personal curse, one that destroyed her peace and left scars she never fully healed from. Even at the height of her career, the fear of her private life turning into public humiliation controlled her every move.